Testing. 1, 2, 3. All right. We're on now. That's good. It's time for us to begin. I'm a new face to a lot of folks. You may or may not know me. My name is Carrie McVeigh, and I'll teach the class this morning. I want to thank you for all being here. I thank you for all the ones that are online that are watching this morning as well. I'm going to start with a few comments before we get into our class this morning. And the first one that I want to start with is that I hope that we are not merely just hearers only or viewers only, but that we're active participants in looking again at the messages that we've already heard, or perhaps hearing some of these things for the first time. You recall in Acts chapter 17 when Paul was in Athens, he was there amongst a city of idols. And a lot of the people that would gather there, the whole purpose that they would do it for was just so that they could tell a new story or to hear a new story. And if that's the only purpose we have, then that's pretty shallow. And we know that that's not what we're aiming for or looking for. Oftentimes we need to be reminded of things we've forgotten, even though we've heard them or we have reviewed them many times. So as we move beyond just hearers only or viewers only, I hope that in all of us that we are truth seekers. And when we're looking for truth, that can be quite a journey for us all. Oftentimes we're looking for those things we like, and the things we don't like we tend to shy away from. But that can't be the case if it's actually true. And we can't be afraid of the truth. We need to hold on to the truth. And we also need to believe that there's absolute truth. Today we hear a lot of things contrary to that outside of these four walls. John 8:31 through 32, Jesus says, "If you abide in my word, you are truly disciples of mine, and you shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free." I hope that we don't forget the abiding part, abiding in the word. Scripture there also says in verse 34 that that's to help keep us from being slaves to sin. John 14:6 says, "Jesus is the way, the truth, and the life." Many will say, but we're studying the Old Testament. We're studying Isaiah. How are we learning about Jesus when we're looking at the Old Testament? Just quickly, from 1 Corinthians chapter 10, 1 through 14. While we're studying the Old Testament, generally we will refer to New Testament scriptures as we're going along to make some of those ties that connect to Jesus and to the New Testament. But 1 Corinthians chapter 10, the old law was written for our instruction. And why is that? Well, it tells us, thank goodness, so that we would not crave evil things and not be idolaters as some of them were. We go, idolatry, that's in another country, that's in another land, that's way in the past by other people. I don't bow down to anything. I don't worship anything other than God. And verse 11 indicates that the old was written for instruction so that we would not fall. I don't know about you, but I don't particularly care for falling. And we generally think about falling physically with steps or an incline. but we can fall spiritually as well. In verse 14, it emphatically states for us to flee idolatry. Now, if that's in the New Testament for those people, then, and we always say the New Testament carries over through any time, even to our time and beyond. There must be some good admonition about fleeing idolatry. Last week, Kevin walked us through lesson 4 of our class booklet called Idols Are Worthless. And the idea of a lifeless substance having any power or life is absurd. It's unconscionable and utterly ridiculous. And then to worship it, bow down to it, or even pray to it is truly disheartening and appalling to the Almighty Creator. Isaiah the prophet points out that Israel witnessed the power of God, which should have continually kept them faithful only to Him. Fidelity in a relationship, especially a relationship with God, is extremely important. Just ask your spouse how important fidelity is if you're not aware, and hopefully you've learned that and knew that getting into that type of relationship before you even stepped into it. Idolatry is completely futile. Today's lesson is lesson number 5, entitled The Idols of Babylon. And we go, oh, here we go again, more about idols and idolatry. But this really has a different emphasis than last week. It has 3 main points, and I don't know that we're going to get through them all. There's a lot here, but we'll do our best to get through it. We have to keep in mind that Isaiah's time, 739 BC to 681 BC. I have to get my mind focused that time goes backwards in BC as far as numbers go. It's just reverse from the way I'm used to with AD. Of course, that's what we're all natural to and accustomed to. 739 to 681 BC. So while Isaiah is preaching and prophesying and teaching to the people of Judah, and we lump the 2 tribes generally together, Benjamin and Judah, and we call them the southern tribes. They're the 2 that split off from the 10. The 10 went north, and we call the 10 that went north the northern tribes of Israel. The 2 that went south we generally call Judah, just to give it a name, even though it actually involved 2 tribes. So Isaiah is teaching, preaching, prophesying to the people of Israel. God's wrath is coming. And people keep hearing that and hearing it. And they're going on with their regular day of life and going, I don't see what's all to worry about. Everything happened like yesterday. Everything happened like it's going today. I'm not really too worried about it. But warning after warning after warning, God gives His people. And then, about in 722 BC, lo and behold, the Assyrian army from the very north comes in and takes away most of the 10 tribes of northern Israel. Wow. Maybe I should have listened to what Isaiah was saying. And it probably was startling, and it was probably very concerning at the time. And, oh dear, the Assyrian army has invaded northern Israel. Are they going to come down and get us now? Now they're starting to worry.
What kind of population do you think we're looking at that point? How many did they take away? Have you an idea?
The Assyrian army was very good at taking those people and moving them to lots of different areas. They wouldn't put them all in one area. They would leave a few in the land so that they were familiar with the land, and they would also bring in other people from distant lands and put them into the land that they just conquered. So they mix up the population. As far as numbers, I would have to say I don't know.
I was just thinking, if you come and take all those people, that's quite a...
But they do it well enough so that there's not enough to collect together and say, well, I'm going to band together a few of my friends, a few of my neighbors, and we're going to fight these Assyrians. Well, they were aware of that tactic. And so they'd make those groups very small that were very familiar, in a friend kind of situation or even family. They would break up families for that very purpose as well. But 722 BC goes on, and 721 comes, and 720 comes, and 719 comes. You go, well, the Assyrian army didn't come down here to where I live. Maybe I'm going to be okay. And so you kind of just let what Isaiah says, oh, he's just another rambler, he's another babbler. I'm okay, things are going just well. But he talks about things that will happen in the future. And we're talking about Babylon today. But in 605 BC, the Babylonians did come and conquer part of Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar came back in 586. In 597 first, and then 586. And it wasn't until 536 that they were able to leave Babylon. And that's when Cyrus comes into the picture. And Kevin brought up Cyrus last week. We'll mention him a little bit this morning. Isaiah has 66 chapters. The books of the whole Bible are 66. How many in the Old Testament? 39. How many in the New Testament? 27. So a few chapters 1 through 39 in Isaiah are about all the time that God is warning them about the wrath that's coming, the captivity that's coming. From 40 to 66 is 27 chapters. And that's the part of Isaiah where God gives comfort to his people. I'm not going to forsake you forever. I am going to redeem you. I am going to bring you back. Not all hope is lost. But you're hearing this amongst a time when you're not invaded. The army isn't coming down, isn't affecting you. And so these things tend to roll off of people's ears if you don't take it seriously. But Isaiah's audience and hearers watched the northern kingdom of Israel go into exile, and it did not even seem to faze them, at least over the long run. But should it have fazed them? Seeing their countrymen being taken away by a foreign army. I brought my backpack today, and it'll serve a dual purpose today. But you see this a lot in work, you see it a lot at college, maybe even yourself use it. I use it every day, to and from work. And I've got a lot of things in it. But this isn't something I normally carry. And you wonder what the chair's about. That's if anyone packs up when it sits you here in front of me. I actually need a taller table because I'm going to set this on here, but that's the best I could do is have this chair here. The block of wood, we talked about this with Kevin's class last week. With half of the log, we cut it up and we burn it. and warm ourselves up by it. The other half, we start looking at it. I didn't carve this, and it's not supposed to represent anything. It's just a piece of wood I picked up out of my firewood pile. And it's probably been carved by little creatures rather than humans. But humans do that. They look at the wood and they say, what can I make out of it? What kind of image am I going to mold out of that? But it's just a block of wood. Probably people on the side may not be able to see that, but maybe I held it up long enough for you to see it. We start in Isaiah 46, 1 through 7 today. Do we have someone that would like to read that? If not, I can read.
I'll read it.
Go ahead, Howard.
Baal has bowed down, Nebo stands over. Their images are consigned to the beast and the cattle. The things that you carry are burdensome, a load for the weary beast. They stooped over, they have bowed down together. They could not rescue the burden, but have themselves gone into captivity. Listen to me, O house of Jacob, and all the remnants of the house of Israel, you who have been born by me from birth, and have been carried from the womb. Even to your old age I will be the same, and even to your gray years I will bear you. I have done it, and will carry you, and I will bear you, and I will deliver you. To whom would you liken me, and make me equal, and compare me, that we would be alike? Those who lavish gold from the purse, and weigh silver on the scale, hire a goldsmith, and he makes it into a god. They bow down, indeed they worship it. They lift it upon their shoulders and carry it. They set it in place, and it stands there. It does not move from its place. Though one may cry to it, it cannot answer. It cannot deliver him from his distress.
Thank you, Howard. While we're talking about idols a lot today, really the three sections that we're dealing with today, we're really looking at God himself and who God is and what God does. But in verses 1 and 2, we are looking at two of the major idols of Babylon, Bel and Nebu. You might also have heard his name as Nebu. Nebu and Nebu are pretty close. Bel is like a head god or supreme god. I'm more familiar with the Greek mythology with Zeus, and maybe you are. And so you kind of compare him to Zeus, if that helps you correlate who Bel is to the Babylonians. Nebu or Nebu is a lesser god. You know that there's many other gods in all of these people's beliefs. But he is a lesser god of wisdom, writing, and learning. So we do know that they valued those things. Wisdom, writing, and learning, the Babylonians. But God brings up these two idols, Bel and Nebu. But he also brings up the idea of carrying them. So sometimes you make an idol out of a block of wood, and that doesn't seem to quite do the trick, so you make a bigger one, and you make a bigger one, and you make a bigger one. And you make it so big, you can't carry it a lot of times. So the large idols are awkward. They're likely to be heavy. So, as you also notice that even those large idols aren't seemingly helping me in my life. They're not helping me with my situation. What's going on here? Well, maybe if I could carry that God with me, when I take him to the field, when I take him to the blacksmith shop, when I take him to wherever in town, if I can just get him closer to me, maybe I can have more power from this God. Well, that naturally is going to mean you're going to have a smaller version or something that you can carry. And because, as it says in verse 7, the block of wood, I've set it there. All the time that it's been sitting there, it's still sitting there. It doesn't move, it doesn't talk. You could speak to it. You can do all kinds of things in front of it, but it's not doing anything. So, like I said, maybe if I could take it with me, put it in my pocket, bring it with me to where I work. Maybe if I, just was able to carry it. Before I go too much further in the text here, I want us to think about us as a country, where we're at today, things we've done in the past. Does America have idols today? And I'm not talking about American Idol. I'm not talking about people. I want to put those sort of things away. And we do idolize people. We do, as a figure of speech. I don't look too much to people of Hollywood. I don't look too much to people who don't have much morality. But do we have idols today? Can Christians fall prey to idols? I want us to read, or I'll read from Colossians chapter 3, verse 5. And this is the New Testament. It's not Isaiah, it's not back in 700 BC. Colossians 3:5 says, "Therefore consider the members of your earthly body as dead to immorality," sexual immorality rather, "impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed, which amounts to idolatry." Now a lot of people will say, it's just the greed part. Greed is next to idolatry, just greed is idolatry. I contend the scripture says that all of those things are idolatry. Let me read it again. Sexual immorality, impurity, passion, evil desire, and greed. When we look at that passage and we think about those things, I think we can start to see that yes, we do indeed have idols in America.
Here, if I may.
Go ahead, Victor.
So the concept of idolatry, if you go back to the original commandment, and God says, "You shall have no other images before me," and you expound on that, and I agree with what you just said there. And even if it was only greed, that's not the only thing that can turn into an idol. The concept of idolatry starts from the point of you have God, and then when you focus and put your trust in something else, or your time and energy in something else, be it money, possessions, entertainment, whatever it is, then that's when you start to turn away from God and you worship. You're worshiping those concepts, those things, whether it's an image or something else. And this first part of Isaiah 46 here, there's a direct comparison. God saying, "I've carried you. I have carried you." Who's carrying the idols? Cows, basically, right? Oxen.
Right.
Beasts of burden. Isn't it ironic that some of those beasts of burden were made also into idols, into graven images? Remember the golden calf, for example, which is will grow into be a beast of burden. So anything that carries you that isn't God, to me, starts to get into that area of this is an idol.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're kind of moving ahead into what I'll present, but that's an excellent way of presenting it here and now. it is the focus of that thing or that idol that makes the difference. So in America, for a lot of years, we've had the desktop computer. It's set there on the desk. It's big, it's heavy, not very mobile, but there are things I can do with it on location. So then as I begin to carry things, I want to make it a little smaller. Lo and behold, the desktop computer is pretty handy in a laptop now. And then I go, well, that's even still a little bit too big. I'm going to carry around this tablet and use it. And you go,
Let me guess.
well, what do I carry all the time? It's even smaller yet.
That's fast to become.
Make sure it's on silent. I forgot to check that.
Don't forget the watch. Watch.
Oh, yeah, I tried, yeah, excellent. Yeah, I even have the watch, although mine's not a computer watch. But some have lots of features on it as well. And I'm showing my age, and we got quite a few that are older here. You remember back in the 70s, a big old box that people would carry on their shoulder.
I still have one.
You know, we used to call it a boom box. And they'd really blast that radio. Never had one that big. Did have a stereo, did have a radio, but I never carried it around like that. But what do we see nowadays with the little phone and these devices here? I won't. Of course, we plug it in and off by ourselves, and we're busy on this. It just, to me, it really appalls me how everybody's life is looking at this constantly. So tied up in this. And of course, as Victor's already brought up, all those things can be used for music, they can be used for entertainment, can be used for movies, it can be used for video games, all those little games that we can play while we're waiting at the doctor. You can easily, every time you sit down, I want to play a game. Yes, Enzi?
In the Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis, there's a couple of chapters that have always stuck in my mind, and one of them is the senior devil was advising the junior devil how to get your man, and he said, don't let your person think. And about that time I started seeing Walkmans. People were out walking and they had their Walkman with them. We always have to have the world coming into us all of the time, but that was one of the ways the senior devil advised the junior devil. Don't let your person think.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's getting you away from God, basically, separating you from the things that you should be doing, things you should be focusing on. Yes?
You know, I knew we were going to get to the smartphone, and everybody here knows kind of how I feel about them. They are a great tool, though. But I was absolutely amazed. Connie and I were in Mexico this month, and we're sitting by the pool. Well, actually, last month, right? It's July, sorry. But anyways, and Connie and I are reading a book, a real book, right? And I look around, and there's dozens, if not hundreds of people. Everyone had a phone out. Everyone. And I'm just like, you come down here with, my phone was in my room. It is amazing how the phone has become the core of everyone's life. And they don't know what they're going to do without it for 10 minutes.
And there are good applications of these things. I use the laptop at work all the time. We're not talking about those things. We use them for business, we use them for planning trips, all kinds of things like that. But we do know there's the potential of those things being an idol and becoming a different focus, taking us away from God. We brought up money that's easily carried, connected to greed, if we let it be. Then we get down to this idea of idols that are stooped or bowed down. Images are being carried by beasts. God is telling the two tribes of Judah and Benjamin that even though the Babylonians will be their captors, the Babylonian gods will not be able to save the heathen nation from what God is going to execute against them. We've already discovered that King Cyrus would be the one that God uses for saving Judah in verses 10 and 11. Read that real quick. Declaring the end from the beginning, from the ancient times, things which have not been done, saying, my purpose will be established, and I will accomplish all my good pleasure. This is God speaking. Calling a bird of prey from the east, the man of my purpose from a far country. Truly I have spoken, truly I will bring it to pass. I have planned it, surely I will do it. It's very emphatic that God is involved in this and God's going to do it. He will take care of the Babylonians when time comes. But these idols are laying down on beasts of burden. They're being carried. And what this is alluding to is when the conquering nation comes in and conquers you and you're defeated, they load up all your idols onto animals to carry them away, to further humiliate you as they take away those gods that never, quote, saved you. Those gods also had gold and silver and precious gems and all that on it, so that was another reason why they would take them. But basically it was to lay them over. They're not standing up anymore. They're face down, which humiliates people as those things are leaving town. Beasts of burden put on animals of all things, like Victor mentioned.
I want to bring up something else too. Remember the story of Dagon, where the Philistines take the Ark of the Covenant and put it in the temple with Dagon, and what happens to him? Here's this lifeless idol, and all of a sudden he miraculously falls over. Then they reset him. The next day he falls over, he's got no hands and no head. And I think, again, God is trying to demonstrate, you're taking materials I have made and comparing them to me, and it's not the same. I live, they don't.
Absolutely. God that's living, the idols don't. Who are we seeking to get help from? Instead of carrying an idol, God is supreme, and as delivered, God carries us early on and into our older years, verses 3 through 7, as Howard read. Even from small or however age we come to the age of accountability, on through our graying years, less hair, all that sort of thing. God still is with us. God still delivers us. I want to read from the booklet, page 41, and we're definitely not going to get through a lot of this stuff. Sorry about that. Our lesson text, page 41 at the bottom, draws a sharp contrast between the idols of Babylon and the Lord God. Unlike idols which were carried from place to place, God carried his people. Unlike idols which neither respond to nor save those who call upon them, God orchestrates the deliverance of his people. Given these vast differences, the decision of the people should have been an easy one. Nevertheless, the appeal of idolatry remained dangerously enticing. I'm going to skip to our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts, 47, 1 through 7. I'll read that quickly. Come down and sit in the dust, O virgin daughter of Babylon. Sit on the ground without a throne, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you shall no longer be called tender and delicate. Take the millstones and grind meal. Remove your veil, strip off the skirt, uncover the leg, cross the rivers. Your nakedness will be uncovered, your shame also be exposed. I will take vengeance and will not spare a man. Our Redeemer, the Lord of hosts, is his name, the Holy One of Israel. Sit silently and go into darkness, O daughter of the Chaldeans, for you will no more be called the Queen of Kingdoms. I was angry with my people. I profaned my heritage and gave them into your hand. You did not show mercy to them. On the aged you made your yoke very heavy. Yet you said, I shall be a queen forever. These things you did not consider, nor remember the outcome of them. Babylon is described as the virgin daughter of Babylon. As often is the case with young daughters, we give them special treatment. We protect them, we give them special care. We may not always expect as much of them as we do our male children. But this is how God describes them, and this is how Babylon thought of themselves, as a virgin daughter. Nothing's going to touch me, nothing's going to affect me. My life is great and grand. But time will come when Sirius comes with his army. They will be fleeing. They won't be treated delicately. They'll have to pull up their pants legs and cross the rivers to flee the army that's coming. God will take care of Babylon at the time that he deems appropriate. But why did he do this to Babylon? It's because of the way they treated the Israelites. So I want us to think about for a minute and quickly, and then I'll have to introduce the last section real quickly. Do we like to be persecuted? Do we like to be mistreated? Do we like all those things? Generally not. Jesus said, if you follow me, they persecuted me. If you follow me, you'll be persecuted as well. But there are times when we're right and we have the so-called upper hand, whether it be court, whether it be the truth or being right. We're not right in and of ourselves. God is right, and we follow God. And we're only made righteous by being obedient to him. We only receive his grace as a gift through him, so it's not us. But even if we have the upper hand in certain situations, over someone who's mistreated us, treated us badly, how do we treat them? Not that I'm always in that kind of position, but sometimes we are. And I would have to admit that sometimes I rather like being right, and I like to express it. But really, when I think about that, God allowed the Babylonians to take over the Jews, take them into captivity, but he expected them to treat them right. Someone who's not treating me right doesn't give me the right to turn right around. Give them a hard time.
I always told my kids, you don't want to be what you dislike in everyone else.
That's a good saying. You don't want to be what you dislike in everyone else. That's a good saying, absolutely. Well, we only have 5 minutes left. There's a lot here, and I knew this would probably happen. There's so much material in here, even though it's about Babylon and it's about idols. I want to get to the last section, verses 8 through 11. Now then, hear this, you sensual one who dwells securely, who says in your heart, I am, and there's no one besides me. I shall not sit as a widow, nor shall I know loss of children. But these two things shall come on you suddenly in one day, loss of children and widowhood. They shall come on you in full measure, in spite of your many sorceries, in spite of your great power or your spells. And you felt secure in your wickedness, and said, no one sees me. Your wisdom and your knowledge, they have deluded you. For you have said in your heart, I am, and there is no one beside me. But evil will come on you, which you will not know how to charm away. And disaster will fall on you, for which you cannot atone. And destruction about which you do not know will come on you suddenly. They didn't think they would ever be affected. They didn't think anything would happen to them. But God said, you will be widows. You will suffer loss of children. You lose your husbands. You will be overcome by another army. God will do that based on how you treated my people Israel. Sorceries and enchantments. If you'll recall, because we don't have much time, in Deuteronomy, in the second giving of the law, it was vehemently prohibited. Sorcery. Also, passing your children to the fire. The god Molech, many would sacrifice their children to the god Molech. That's what we call passing to the fire. Sorceries start way back from Babylonian and Egyptian times, and they've carried through and come all the way through. Sorcery is the supposed use of an evil supernatural power over people and their affairs. Oftentimes we call it black magic. The Babylonians had many idols. Marduk, Bel, Sin, which is their moon god, Miguel, Shamash, Ishtar, Anu, Enki, Tammuz, Nebu, just to name a few, and there's many more. To sacrifice children primarily to satisfy the god or receive favor from the god is just, it completely blows my mind. I can't picture why they would do that. But they're trying to get some kind of favor and nothing's happened. So if we do something extreme and give it something precious, maybe he'll give me something precious. I want to say this in closing, and it's a sad thing to talk about at the end. I hope to have more opportunity to talk about it later down the road. Many of these concepts and things of idols have come down through the years, have continued to come down through the years. There are many groups that hate God, that hate Jesus, that hate Christians. And they're doing everything they can to destroy them. And they have basically still used a lot of these idols, but they're basically worshiping Satan and doing very much the same practices that have been carried on for hundreds and thousands of years. It's still going on today. The Baphomet is an idol. You know, Kevin brought up idols started having partly fish. And you read about a lot of them, they'll have wings. So you've got to give them animal characteristics because they're still not quite giving me the effect that I want. But the Baphomet is an idol with a goat's head, goat's feet, has horns, has wings. It's partly female, it's partly male. And it's worshipped toward the goal of mixing up the genders. Much of the transgender scene comes from this particular idol and evil practices. And while that's a sad note to end on, I do want to at least say this, that most of this section is about God, God the Lord of hosts, God the Lord the Redeemer, God the Lord the deliverer, God the Lord the carrier. God is alive, God is real. You can pray to him, you can bow down to him, you can worship him. And your life is going to be much, much better. You've got to go to your Creator. Stop using his created things to make these idols and use these other things for the focus that they really weren't intended for. Any last word or any last thought? Sorry, we didn't have much discussion this morning. All right, I'll leave it to next week.
Morning. Good.
Hello, Mary.
That's why the dance never goes back to me. But I have a